Hello, hello, hello. It's the bird emergency. It's Megaphone Monday, where I get to talk to Dr. Holly Parsons from Birdlife Australia, the manager of the Urban Birds Project, and we'll shorten that down to a handle that everybody knows and can easily find. That's Birds in Backyards. Hi, Holly. Hey, how are you? That's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it?
It is a bit of a loaded question. Hey, Grant. We're, doing the COVID battle in this house as a surprise from the weekend, but we're okay.
That's you and 97% of New South Wales, I believe. So
yeah, exactly. It was only a matter of time.
That's right. That's right. I'm amazed I've been able to keep away from it. But hey, today we're going to talk about just about all, I think, of the current Birdlife Australia, and that's Birdlife Oz if you want to go on Twitter and use the handle at Birdlife Oz and follow it. Birdlife, it's birdlife.org.au. Yes,
that's right.
There we go. I was going to call it .oz, but I know. And so we'll be putting up as much of the links and the information as possible as we go through. So a little bit less free form than we usually go, but looking forward to hopefully having someone jump in and tell us about their work they may have done as a citizen scientist or what they would like to do. But we've got a guest, haven't we, Holly? We have a guest today. Let's bring her in. Hello, it's Sky McPherson. Hello, Sky.
Hi, Grant. How are you? Hi, Holly.
Hi.
Now, Holly, would you like to tell everyone what Sky is doing in terms of the citizen science that we're talking about today?
So Sky is one of the amazing team at Birdlife Australia, and she is coordinating the southeastern red-tailed black cockatoo count, Sky, and project. She can tell us much more about it than I can.
Spot on. Yeah, it's the southeastern red-tailed black cockatoo, which basically the range down southwest of Victoria and southeast of South Australia, an endangered species. So yeah, we've been keeping track of the numbers for the past 10 or so years now, and yeah, we're always looking for volunteers to help out, trying to keep track of what the population's looking like.
Sky, can I ask you, what does somebody need in terms of skill to be able to take part in the red-tailed black cocky count?
Pretty much they just need some eyeballs and some ears. Yeah, quite often, the easiest way to find red tails is listening out for them. Yeah, that's a nice tip for you. How
do the records, the survey records, entries get made? Oh.
Yeah, so basically what will happen if you're involved in the count, you'll just physically write it down when you're out in the field, and then you just email me that data that you've recorded for the day, and that then gets uploaded to our database. So it's a pretty easy, straightforward process for the volunteers involved. Yeah, and we just try and make it straightforward.
So it's one day only. So what's the area that you cover, and is there like a meeting before everyone goes out? Do people have a specific area to survey like they do with the Tasmanian Where We're Wedgie surveys, or is it just wherever they are, similar to the backyard bird count?
Yeah, it is basically focused in the red tail habitat, obviously. We send volunteers out to stringy bark sites across the region, and there's about 60 sites that we cover on this one particular day. And that range is scattered from Nelson down in the south and up to Little Desert National Park in the north of the southwest Vic range. And then in South Australia, it's all the way down from Mount Gambier in the south and then up to the Keith area in the top of South Australia. So there's a lot of range to cover on the day. So yeah, that's why we're always looking for more volunteers.
So that tells us that you need at least 60 people to be involved to cover all the sites. So how long has it been going? And like, how many surveys have you already done? And give us an idea of the participant numbers and what have you found out so far?
Yeah, basically it's been going for over 10 years. This is actually the first count that I will be coordinating as part of the BirdLife role. I have been a volunteer myself on the count a few years ago. But yeah, basically, it's been going for quite a few years now, and we've noticed that the population is not really increasing currently. Yeah, it's really just stabilised to a certain point now, and which just tells us that there's obviously a lot more work that we need to do in terms of protecting their habitat and their numbers.
Now the red tails in southwest Victoria and that southeastern part of South Australia, are they a race, are they a subspecies, or are they potentially a separate species to the other red-tailed black cocky populations?
Yeah, good question, Grant. They are actually noted or known as a subspecies of red-tailed black cockatoo. There is actually 5 subspecies of red tails in Australia, and our southeastern subspecies, that's an endangered species of the red tails.
Now, it's one of the Indigenous names that gets applied commonly in the region. Who wants to have a crack at it?
Not me.
Isn't it the Karak is the southwest Victorian name for the red-tailed black? I might be making a complete idiot of myself, but a couple of years ago that there was a lot of publicity, and I think it was a mascot for, was it the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne?
I think it has been sort of mascot, but I think the Indigenous name, I think there's quite a few different names depending on the region, and I know that in WA, that could be the case over in WA as well, because they have the Karakan sanctuary over there. So I don't know.
It's probably, I'll tell you what, I'll admit my ignorance here. It was probably a name that someone in the Commonwealth Games marketing team grabbed from the southwest of Western Australia and wrongly applied to the southwest of Victoria. And I bought into it. It's probably the way it goes. Holly, I hate to be the sort of person who asks all the questions, but if you're sending people out to do a survey that's affiliated with an organisation, what about insurance? Do you know how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we at BirdLife, and I'm sure Sky can fill you in as well, we do risk assessments for all our field work. We have all our volunteers sign on, which means that they're covered by public liability insurance, and they are, notified of when, where they are supposed to be and what all the risks are that are associated with their field work. There'll be someone out there with first aid training, contact points that will be Sky and probably some other people as well. So, of course, we want to make sure everybody is safe and making sure that they are following instructions and doing the right thing to keep themselves safe and keep the birds safe. We don't do field work, for example, on catastrophic fire conditions and things. There are all sorts of criteria that we put in place on when events go ahead or when they're postponed for some health and safety reasons.
And look, I'm just pushing the boundaries here, but having recently had a little scare with something myself, do people have to make a declaration that they are fit and able to do vigorous walking or something like that to be involved? Sky?
Yeah, I think we just advise that's sort of appropriate for the type of work that's required of the participants. I think they're pretty well across what would be involved with our registration form that we send out to everyone. So we explain what would be required on the day, and hopefully everyone's truthful with their responses. Yeah, no,
I just want to make sure that someone with a buggy or a walking frame doesn't rock up and go, I'm here to help, and they might be disappointed if they're on the organisers' table. Apart from the surveys that are happening, what other work is the project doing regularly, Scott?
I should actually also mention the stringy bark assessments that we do, and this is also an added bonus, you could say, for the annual count. We're offering it to participants to do their own stringy bark analysis, which is what we have been doing for a few years now. But we've just decided last year and having another go this year that, if you're interested in having a look at some of the stringy bark that you're walking around in, you can actually look at the canopy of about 5 or 6 trees we ask, and we just get you to tell us what condition the trees are in, if it's got a good canopy cover or if it's got lots of seed capsules on the top as well. But yeah, that's the stringy bark monitoring is a program that the recovery team have been working on as well, which is something that, a recent thing that we can get participants involved in as well.
Terrific. Well, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just scrolling along the form on redtail.com.au/how to get involved in counts.html. And you have to fill out this little form with your name and whatnot. But the other questions, you get to nominate a site preference. So eastern part of range, maybe around a particular town. Annual count training required, yes or no? Have you participated in the count previously, yes or no? And do you have a 4-wheel drive? So obviously, if they answered yes to that, Sky, I'm guessing they're going to be perhaps helping ferry people around the survey area.
Yeah, or getting into areas that are a little bit more difficult for 2-wheel drivers. Yeah, there's obviously quite a few places that are a bit isolated and have real sandy tracks at this time of year. So if you have a 4-wheel drive and a comfortable 4-wheel driving, it's always good to have those types of vehicles and people for the count.
Definitely. Now, is there an email address or some socials where people could reach out between now and then if they wanted to talk to you or somebody else who's been involved in the count before, or just generally follow the recovery team?
Yeah, we try and keep the website up to date as possible. But yeah, there's also our Facebook page as well, which we do the occasional post on. I think it's just Redtail. Can't remember the name of the Facebook page, but I can have a quick look. If you just Google Redtail, Facebook, you'll be able to find it. Southeastern Redtail Black Cockatoo Project.
If you Google Redtail Count 2022, for me it was the top result in Google. So I'm sure if you threw Facebook on the end of it, you would probably find the Facebook page really easily. Now, I know you've got a number of things to do, Sky, since it's a work day. Have you got anything else that you want to let us know before we bid you adieu?
I'd just probably suggest that if you are in the redtail range, it's really great if you do see any redtails between now and the annual count on the 7th of May, to report those sightings, because that gives us a little bit more direction as to where to send volunteers on the day. So if we know where those redtails are hanging out, we're more likely to see them. So yeah, between sort of March, April, May is a really good time to report your sightings.
And Sky, are the recovery team monitoring the data that might be on maybe eBird or Bird Data or anything else along the journey?
Possibly.
Holly, do you know, is there a preferred, if people are used to using apps and putting their sightings in, is there a preferred app to use?
Oh, look, it probably does depend on the project, but I know within my urban team that we use Bird Data as our primary source or our primary place that we direct our surveys, but we do check other databases as well. And there are so many great sources of information out there now. Citizen science has had this massive boom, which means that there are all these platforms that you can check and pull data from. Everybody is open and sharing information, so that's fantastic. No matter where you put it, chances are that anybody who's researching that species will be able to find it.
Yeah, magnificent, really good. Sky, is there anything else other than go to redtail.com.au to sign up? Saturday, 7th of May is the next count. Is there only one a year?
Yep, one a year. The first Saturday in May every year.
Okay, we might continue on through the amazing pile of projects we've got to talk about. Feel free to hang about if you want to, Sky. We're just going to remove the black-tailed cockies. They're gone. Holly, guess what we're up to next?
Where do you want to go? There's a lot to cover.
There we are.
My baby.
Your friend. When are the next Birds in Backyards surveys?
So Birds in Backyard surveys run year round. There's no excuse not to be doing a count at any time. We tend to promote our Birds in Backyard surveys on a seasonal basis. So autumn is underway now. So we'll hold our autumn surveys through March and April. And Birds in Backyard surveys are literally that. They're a count of the birds that you've got in and around your own space. So it can be your front yard, it can be your backyard, it can be your local park if you like. It's recording the birds that you see, Generally in 20 minutes is the preferred count, but you can give us a weekly list if you like. And the extra layer on top of just the bird sightings is that we collect some information about what the habitat is like. So we ask people to, dare I say it, take a bird's eye view of their garden and let us know what they've got, whether they've got mostly native plants or mostly introduced plants, if they've got dogs or cats that are in their yard, or that might be your own or could be somebody else's that wander through. If you feed birds, if you put water out for birds. So we're trying to build up an idea of not only what birds are visiting these sort of our private spaces in urban areas, but what are the features that are bringing them there? Or conversely, what are the features that might be discouraging some birds from visiting? And
with the 20 minutes, that's the same sort of format that the great Aussie backyard bird count takes. Does it use it, but it's not the same app that people enter in?
No, it's not. So the Aussie Backyard Bird Count is our once a year annual census, is probably the easiest way to describe it. So it's your entry level birding. Even if you don't know the names of all your birds, if you've just got a fleeting interest, if you're looking for an activity to do with the kids, it's a really simple count that anybody can do anywhere during that third week in October. So it's a once a year event that we just hold during that time. Its aim is to get that annual view that we can track year after year and see how many people we can get involved and how many birds we can see and get people interested and eager to watch their birds and tell us about how birds are tracking year after year. Then, if you have a bit of an interest and you're noticing birds around your space, or you're just noticing the same birds because boring birds count too, you can take the next level, which is the Birds in Backyard surveys, which are doing hopefully 4 times a year, once a season, letting us know what's going on in your space and what your garden is like. And then we can use that, as I said, for that sort of closer look at what features are really bringing some of these birds around your garden.
So are you wanting people, apart from making the sighting or of the bird or hearing the bird, how about details, what they're eating or what they're doing or who they're hanging out with? Is there scope to put details like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. So the Birds in Backyard surveys go in via Bird Data, which is Birdlife's big monitoring platform. So that's where almost all of our surveys go.
And I just tried to bring it up, but because it's a PDF, the link, it wouldn't let me do it. I wanted to show people how they could get involved, but no.
There's birdsinbackyards.net, we've got those PDF instructions for people to go through. So that feature goes into Bird Data. We have some functionality in there so people can tell us a whole range of different things. So with each bird that you might see, you can give us a little bit of information. There's a free form field there if you just want to tell us something interesting that's going on. But we also record things like if the bird is showing any breeding characteristics, are they nesting, is there young birds, there's functionalities to click there. You can also let us know if there's some angry bird situations happening. So if you're seeing any interactions of birds in your space, you can let us know. There's just some little buttons to click. Tell us who the instigator was, tell us who the victim was. What do you think they were fighting over? Were they fighting over food? Was it a predatory attack? Was it just noisy miners being noisy miners and being angry at everything? And then you can tell us what the outcome was. Did the instigator succeed and chase off a bird, or did the victim fight back? And so we get a little bit of an idea of what the aggressive species are that are responsible for some of those behaviours in our gardens. There's a lot more complexity in the Birds in Backyard surveys. But at a base level, it's what birds do you see and what sort of garden do you have? And then you can always tell us more. I love getting more. It's not only really useful at a big picture level to start to look at who are the particularly aggressive species and what sort of birds are breeding in gardens and which ones are not, but you get these really great anecdotes in there of people saying, this is the first time I've seen this bird in my garden, or I haven't seen this one for 5 years, or I saw a hobby dive down and try and take out a dove. You get all sorts of amazing stories pop up in there. It's a real pleasure to go through.
Have you been doing any other surveys other than the red-tailed black cockatoo? Are you a birds in backyarder?
I'm a bit of a bird nerd, Grant. Yeah, I do have those apps on my phone. So, yeah, I do occasionally do it. But I think more often I just take note of things every day now. So especially what you were saying about the aggression side of things, Holly, or like what they're feeding on. Yeah, in Melbourne, there's outside the house, there's some little wattlebirds, and it's just really entertaining watching them all day while I'm working from home, because you can really learn their behaviours from hour to hour almost. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I put a call out on Twitter, I think yesterday or on Sunday, about what's the best wattle bird, because I've got little wattlebirds and red wattlebirds here, and I love how the little wattlebird never loses a fight. They don't always win them, but they never lose. They're pugnacious little buggers.
Oh, for sure. But every Tasmanian is now screaming that yellow wattlebirds are actually better than both of those. But, for example, the Birds in Backyard surveys, when we did some analysis a couple of years ago, and we're doing some more analysis at the moment, little wattlebirds were really the linchpin. So if you had little wattlebirds in your garden, you had this really amazing list of other birds that liked to live with you. Potentially they're a little gateway bird that if your habitat's good for little wattlebirds, it's probably good for a whole heap of other urban birds that you might like to get in your garden.
Holly, the horticulturist in me won't stay down. At the level that you see the data, are you able to see the relationships between the kind of plantings that people mention and who's feeding on them? Because I would love to turn that into some kind of document and with a recommended planting list and whatnot. I'd love to do that. Hint.
Get outside. You're in my brain now, Grant, because that's one of the things we're working on this year. Yeah, so look, we're able to look at what different habitat preferences are that some bird species have. It does mean you need quite a lot of data to be able to pull out some of those. So for the birds that we might only be getting a few records of, we can't pull that sort of information out. But we see things like superb fairy wrens more likely to be found in gardens where you've got more than 50% shrub cover. That was the same for eastern spinebills and silver eyes. But eastern spinebills and silver eyes also like less grass cover. So you can see there's some different layers you have to build in to some of these analysis to really pull out the preferences. Fairy wrens liked lots of open grass and lots of shrubs, whereas spinebills like lots of shrubs but not a lot of grass. There's a very general trend which holds true in all sorts of research into urban birds in Australia, is that, native plants are really the key. You get a much higher diversity of birds when you have mostly native plants in your garden as opposed to mostly introduced plants. We don't ask any more detail than that in these surveys because, of goodness knows, I don't know the name of every plant that I've got in my garden. I wouldn't expect anybody else to as well. So we just do that very basic division into mostly native, bit of a mix, or mostly introduced. And then we ask those details around cover. We also – sorry, go.
I was just going to say, while somebody was urgently ringing Sky, probably this, I've been ringing your doorbell for 20 minutes. Why won't you let me in? Remember, we did a stream about the layers and the way you need to arrange plantings to make them a good place for
we know even from this data too that there's not one bird-friendly garden for any bird or for even one species, that there are garden features at opposite ends of the spectrum that birds are going for as well. So we know magpie larks or peewees or mudlarks or whatever you want to call them, they were more likely found in gardens that either had more than 50% tree cover or next to no tree cover and a lot of lawn. So they're going for two different habitat uses, which is great because it means there's a huge amount of flexibility there in what you can do to create great spaces.
I know how you can attract a magpie lark to your garden.
A mirror?
Yeah, just put a mirror somewhere that they'll see it if they're anywhere in the neighbourhood. Drive them mad, but that way they'll at least get to know your backyard pretty quickly. Anything else we need to talk about with the Birds in Backyard surveys, Holly, or the program in general?
Look, There's some great things coming. I can't say too much. Those surveys are always available for people to take part in, and it does tell us this sort of really useful on-the-ground information that we can give out, and we can talk to local councils. We can, talk to the public about creating great spaces. I would just really encourage people that two fronts that. Ideally, we need surveys done more than once. So the more surveys you can give us, the better, because it gives us that repeat surveys happening time and time again. So we build up a better idea of what's happening in your space if you're out there consistently. So even if that's 4 times a year, for birds in backyards, that's literally 80 minutes over your year that I would like, please. It's not a huge amount of time. And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to do this if you have this really exciting list of birds. So don't think that you only have 3 different birds visiting your garden, or I've only got common miners and some house sparrows and a magpie. That's okay. There is no judgment with birds in backyards. We actually need to know the full spectrum of these different gardens and the types of birds that they're attracting. So it's not something that you only do if you think you have a bird-friendly garden that is going to be attracting 20 different species. All data is really valuable data for this.
If somebody is like me and is an apartment dweller and has no backyard to speak of these days, and if you're not aware of anybody surveying your local piece of public ground, can you substitute that?
Absolutely. The question's quite garden specific, so it probably means that you've got to think a little bit about what goes on in that public space along the same sort of lines. But you can absolutely do a birds in backyard survey. We've just got a simple button that you can click that says that you're in a park, and you still collect that habitat information. Otherwise, Bird Data has just a general bird survey as well. So you can go and give us a list from any place in Australia at any time, and all of that feeds in. If it's in an urban space, it still gets analysed in the urban team. There's all sorts of ways that you can pop the data in for sure.
Now, I've got 2 questions before we move on to the next one for you, Holly. How many people are on the Urban Birds team? And the second question is, where are they located? Like, how geographically diverse is the Urban Bird?
Look, it has grown significantly because it used to just be me. We have our Birds in Schools project officer in Melbourne. We have our Conservation Action Plan coordinator in Brisbane. I've got Powerful Owl project officer in the Gold Coast. So Southeast Queensland again. I've also got a project officer doing Powerful Owl work in Sydney. So we're very much Eastern Seaboard. That's not to say there's not urban citizen science going on in bird life in WA, and because of Tegan Douglas, of course.
Tegan.
So we certainly are spreading. There's always room for more. And so we're always looking for opportunities for new projects and bringing more staff on. It's just a matter of finding them and finding some.
And of course, we've got a bit more to talk about what's going on in the Southwest in just a little while. You did a beautiful segue there, Holly, about what's up next. And what's up next is Birds in Schools.
So Birds in Schools it's such a fun project. So this is a school-based bird monitoring and conservation program that we run. So it is something that's available Australia-wide for any primary school to take part in. And it's all about teaching kids how to survey birds on their school grounds. The students then analyse their own data. So they learn some maths, they learn some graphing, they look at the requirements of all the different birds that they've got visiting their school grounds, and then they develop an action plan. So what are they going to do on their school grounds based on what they're seeing to either manage the habitat for birds or enhance the habitat for birds? So it's quite an intensive project. It's not just 1 or 2 lessons. This is an 11-lesson program. And so it can take a term or more, depending on how many surveys that the teachers might like to do with their students. But it's really rewarding. It really immerses the kids in birds and in wildlife in general. It gets them outside and doing outdoor learning. It's a really fantastic project. I think we had something like 60 schools take part last year. It's still running through again this year, using a platform online, which means that we can reach a lot of students. We can train a lot of teachers around the country to take part because the teachers do a lot of the lesson delivery. And we have things like live Q&As with students as well and hear about what they've been doing. It's been really great because we track their learning as well. We can see how their knowledge has increased and how their enjoyment of birds has increased as well. And so it's about not only getting that on-ground conservation happening, so getting things happening in school grounds that benefit birds, but also encouraging that lifelong learning and love of birds and wildlife that will carry, hopefully, the kids through the rest of their lives.
That's when you need to get them, when they're young.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sky, I was going to put you on the spot because the red-tailed black cocky is kind of an emblematic bird in the southwest. Is there an outreach effort of any sort going into schools to perhaps prepare kids to be future surveyors?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's quite a few. So we try and do quite a few school or classroom talks during the year.
That's really good.
If you are a kid, sorry.
Go ahead. If you're a kid, what would you tell a kid who's into cockies?
If you're into cockies, I just tell them to keep looking and do what you can. Talk to your parents about doing some tree planting or that sort of thing. But I guess if you are a kid in the region of the red tails, you're pretty likely to know about the red tails once it's infiltrated into your school. Yeah, most kids know the red tail now as an iconic species for the region. And even the other day when I was doing a field day at a local show, so I just set up a little stall and people just walked past and the kids came up to me and said, "Oh, I know what that is. I've got a model red-tailed black cockatoo." And the kids come up and they have a look and I ask them, "Do you know what this is? Have you seen one of them before?" And they're like, "Yeah, we heard about them in school," and that sort of thing. The word is definitely out there. That's
great. And how much impact do you think you've had so far, Holly, with the birds in schools? Like you said, there were 60 schools visited. Do you go again, or is the idea to get another 60? Or do you do repeat visits if they want?
Look, it's a bit of both. So ideally we want schools to adopt this to be something that they do year after year. And we've certainly seen that there have been, a few schools that do that. But the curriculum is incredibly packed for teachers. And goodness knows the last couple of years have been really hard with a lot of students not actually on school grounds and able to do some of this work. So look, we always want to reach more schools. I think one of the advantages of being on a platform and doing some of this online is that it means that schools that are remote or rural are able to access these resources and take. It also means that it relies on the teachers really having that interest. And I think where we've seen it do really is where we have that really passionate teacher who is also a bit of a bird nerd and is really keen to keep the project going. Ideally, what we want to see is that, these schools are taking part year after year as different classes come through, that they're taking part and that they are taking different actions through the years that are going to see that change in bird communities happen on their school grounds. It's, as I said, it's tough sometimes because the teachers do have a lot that they have to do, but we've tried to develop a resource that, teaches those core lessons, but can be adapted. So it can be incredibly flexible. We've seen some schools go off and do nest box work and build a whole heap of nest boxes that they then go and monitor, and bringing in their sort of more woodworking skills and engineering skills. We've seen some go down a creative arts route as well, and there's been some great poetry and paintings of the birds that they've seen. When we did this a few years ago in Sydney, we had one school basically did an interpretive dance showcasing the birds that they had on their school grounds. So there are so many different ways that birds can be incorporated. So we've tried to make a program that teaches these basics but gives teachers the flexibility to take it where they want and where they're interested.
Wouldn't it be really great if schools had the opportunity to integrate their sort of Stephanie's garden kind of thing and the woodworking, the nest boxes, the artwork, and also the decisions that the school community, the management group make about plantings and whatnot. Like, for instance, all the primary schools in the southwest, Sky, should be, and the secondary schools, all the schools should be planting some casuarinas or some stringy barks, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the more out there, the better. And, the more people we can get involved, the better too. So, absolutely.
Fabulous. Is there anything else we need to cover off in birds in schools for now. I think we're going to need to do a whole episode at some stage and talk to maybe some of the team, Holly. And who knows, maybe we can even speak to some of the kids who have been involved or some of the teachers who have taken it on board and spread the good word.
That would be great. Fantastic. I think there's a real strength in kids learning from other kids as well. And so giving that platform for them to share ideas and exchange their learning only, I think, really reinforces enjoyment in these sorts of things. And yeah, the kids are brilliant. It's been a really amazing project.
And let me just put that address up one more time. So if you go to the Birdlife Australia, birdlife.org.au page, click through projects, urban birds in, anywhere on birds in backyards, I would imagine will get you there eventually. Birds in Schools project. So
Birds in Schools. Yeah, that's right. So if any teachers, if this is ringing some bells and sounds like there's something that they might be interested in, you can take part anytime throughout the year. So if you go to Birds in Schools, if you just Google it, and then there's an email there, you can contact Alex, who's our project officer, and she will get you started.
Hello, Alex. How are you? Very good. That's great. Okay. The marathon continues, Holly. The marathon continues. I'm just checking. Yeah, no worries, Guy. Whenever you need to click out, just head on out. We're moving on to something that's had quite a lot of publicity recently. Holly, let's talk gangs.
Gangs, yes. Look, voted, I think, Australia's number 2 most favourite bird last year in the Guardian poll. I think it was just beaten out by the superb fairy wren. Gang cockatoos are just a bird that just has a real affinity for a lot of people. They are just incredibly engaging and sweet and gorgeous, but also our newest member of threatened species list in Australia federally. They have been undergoing quite serious decline for a number of decades. I think the analysis from bird data was showing somewhere between up to some of our surveys that they were down by sort of 70% in the last 20 years or so, sitting somewhere around almost 50% decline across a lot of the different monitoring tools that have been used. And we know that they were one of the species that was really badly impacted by the 2019-2020 fires. Something like 30 odd % of their habitat was burned, I believe. So there are a species that's under a huge amount of risk. They're a cold climate bird, which means that increasing temperatures from climate change and increasing intensity and severity of fires mean that things are only going to get worse for these sweet little birds, unfortunately. So we're doing a bit of a gang recovery project at the moment. So that's been funded by the federal government, by their regional bushfire recovery for multi-regional species and strategic projects program. So we got some funding at the end of last year to run a project that aims to really teach people about gangs. What we do know, which in a lot of cases isn't actually a huge amount. There's a lot we need to know about gangs and what people can do to take action for them. To do that, we're targeting areas that were impacted by those fires. So we're working in East Gippsland, in the Eurobodalla and the south coast of New South Wales, in the ACT and in the Blue Mountains. And we have a module for our birds in schools to take part in. So the kids on their school grounds are going to be learning about gangs and taking action for gangs. And then we are also working with gardeners and rural property owners as well. So they're doing some online learning about gangs, about how amazing they are. We're getting some sightings in on where gangs are occurring. And then we're getting them to put together action plans for what they want to do to help gangs on their properties. For some, we've got some funding too for rural property owners to put some plants in the ground and put some nest boxes up. So there's a lot going on. There will be more to come on gangs. With this new listing means that there's going to have to be recovery plans put in place, and there's going to be a lot more on-ground conservation for these guys.
Yeah, Holly, I get so angry when I see a bird that, well, in the last 15 years, when I was living in Gippsland, we regularly had a small flock that would come through. Every time I went to Canberra, I would see gangs. They were a reliable sighting in the right habitat. Even the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, when the hawthorns and cotoneasters, which are dreadful invasive garden plants anyway, but when they were when they had berries on them, the gangangs, you could count on them arriving. The fact that we've got them now as endangered is just, it's a disgrace. I've got no other words for it.
It's really quite terrifying that a bird that is so loved and everybody has there's no one that doesn't like a gang. And until the fires, I think a lot of this situation was really under the radar. Like, this decline is not just due to the fires. This decline has been going on for decades. And so it's only now that this listing has happened. And so there are some amazing projects going on through a lot of fire-affected regions at the moment on gangs as well, that hopefully going to help us to turn the corner with these guys. But it shouldn't have got to this point, unfortunately. But we can say that about a lot of species.
Yeah. Can I say something that might be a bit controversial and might upset some people? But I think that we allow governments, and it doesn't matter whether it's state, federal, whether it's local councils, doesn't matter whether they're blue or red or pink or green, but the fact that the decline has been sheeted home to the bushfires misses one obvious point about the gangs that have been sharing the outer suburbs with us for years and years and years. And to me, the obvious thing is that we've got rid of all the old trees. We've got rid of all the hollows. Every time there's a storm and a tree falls on someone's car, in that locality, in that municipality, all the old trees get removed. It just seems to me blatantly obvious, but nobody wants to say perhaps we shouldn't cut down all the trees every time we have a severe windstorm, more severe than we used to get because of climate change. I mean, it's just nuts. It's just completely and utterly nuts to me. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Nobody is going to like someone like me saying, no, you can't cut down every tree. Park your car somewhere else. Or if you remove the tree, you need to put 2 or 3 different size nest boxes up. But we can't force anyone to do anything. It's just rubbish. We just don't care.
It's that really it's a massive challenge of urbanisation, is people taking up the space and getting that balance between managing risk for limbs falling, but also recognising the value of these trees, and how do we strike a better balance that means that we're keeping as many people safe as possible, but making sure we're not just ripping out any valuable habitat. It's incredibly challenging, and we obviously don't have it right yet, but we need to. And there's still a huge amount, back to gangs, that we don't actually know about these birds, that even though they are quite visible, when you've got them around, you'll hear that little creaky call, you'll see things being dropped, and that people tend to know when they're there. We don't know a lot about their even basic demography. It's about protecting them in urban spaces, but also they are significant risk of impact from logging and things as well, because that tends to be where their nest is, up in higher altitudes and colder climates.
That's right. And what we don't know, it means that we should be exercising caution, and that as we remove the trees that possums will live in, maybe not the gangs, but the possums will then perhaps invade any hollows that are still available for the other birds like the gang. It's just such an obvious connection. And I don't even know why nobody has thought, how about we do some kind of a rebate on insurance premiums for people who remove a dangerous tree, but they also replace some artificial habitat for the birds and the animal that may be affected? Yeah,
look, it's a possibility. Again, you have to be very careful with that too. Nest boxes are not the automatic equivalent of a tree hollow. There are a lot of species who don't like using them. We're still figuring out. There's some great work going on in the Eurobodalla on gangs and nest tubes that are being built. So we're still trying to uncover the secret to a good gang nest box. There are some species like powerful owls that we just haven't cracked that code yet. We don't know how to make a good equivalent. So I think it can be quite dangerous too to assume that some of those artificial features are in any way the same, because they're not. They are a poorer cousin, unfortunately. They're better than nothing, but they're certainly not anywhere near as valuable as these big old trees.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. And look, I recently spoke with Kylie Soanes about the
3D nest
printing, and of course we've spoken to Mark with Habitat, which is now Habitat Innovations.
Yep.
Mick. And then there's the Hollow Hog, which is creating irregular shapes in existing trees, which gives another option. And then you mentioned the tubes that out of PVC piping and whatnot. So my beef with it all, Holly, is that not that we don't know. There aren't the studies out there to know what works, because there aren't the number of options for the birds or the animals to use. And until there are, we can't do the studies, because putting 20 nest boxes up in a municipality is not the right kind of number. It needs to be hundreds or thousands. And that's where I would like to see a levy somehow from the insurance, because everybody wants their insurance. And if you're removing the dangerous tree, you're reducing your risk. So there should be a saving of some description, and maybe some of that could be applied to other kinds of projects, and it could be municipal based, or I don't know, but nobody seems to be talking about it. It always comes back to, Holly, can you organise a researcher and do some research? Which they've got to have something to study. If there's no holes for the birds and the animals to live in, what are they going to study, for crying out loud? Anyway, that's me being Grumpy Grant. Grumpy Grant is here again. Boy, jingos. Now, Holly, I mentioned 3D nest box printing. Oh, let's just say, is there anything else that I've got the web page up there for
Sure.
Gaga about gang gangs. There's the link there to go to gang gangs in schools, but I did not find the link for the recovery team. I just found a PDF about the recovery team, which I have difficulty sharing. So
That's okay. So if you're interested in taking part in our gang projects, there's the school version, and then there's the version for any gardeners or rural landowners. That project has just started, but we're certainly not going to turn anybody away if they want to jump on board now. So that article that's up on the screen now, or you can see below, that has got the information on who to contact to register your interest and so we can get you involved. It is for those bushfire affected areas at the moment, so East Gippsland, South Coast of New South Wales, ACT and Blue Mountains. But after this grant period, we'll certainly have those resources available, so anybody from across the gang gangs distribution can take part and develop their own action plans for protecting the species.
Fabulous. Okay, let's take the gang gangs down, and let's put up where are they? Here. No. Hide this one. Get a grip, Grant. Here we go. There it is. It's a long one, so we won't read it out. You can talk about the Powerful Hour volunteers, and
Sure.
if anybody wants to have a look, you can follow the text and you will see where they are required and how to get involved. Holly, take it away. I'm going to find something else to share while you're talking.
Okay, no worries. In the urban team at Birdlife, the other project that we have where we're looking for citizen scientists is our Powerful Owl project. So that is in the regions of Greater Sydney, though if you're down in the Illawarra, if you're up through the Central Coast and Newcastle, that's perfectly okay as well. And also Southeast Queensland. So basically, if you're in Southeast Queensland and you're interested in getting involved, we will certainly be keen to have you. So powerful owls are a species that's threatened or vulnerable in all the states that it occurs in along the east coast of Australia. They are our biggest owl, and they are quite simply incredible birds to watch. But what we're learning about them is that urban spaces can be quite important for them. So we've been researching, and through our amazing team of citizen scientists, watching powerful owls in Greater Sydney for 10 years now, and we've been underway in Southeast Queensland in the last 3 or 4 years. And so basically what we do with this project is that we provide training for anybody who has an interest in these birds to go out and keep an eye on powerful owls that are near them, particularly through the winter months. So it is a little bit colder. It's a bit of cold field work. So basically you are going out mostly during the day. It's not actually a lot of nighttime work, and keeping an eye on powerful owls near you and letting us know how they are faring. So going through the breeding season, which is getting started now. Things are starting to happen with the female going into the hollow in sort of April, May, following through the breeding season until we hopefully in sort of end of July, August, September, get some lovely fluffy owlets out of nest hollows and seeing how they are faring. So our volunteers are basically keeping an eye on these amazing birds in their patch and reporting back on what they are up to. So whether they successfully raise young, whether they're seen with prey, what they might be up to in general around their area. And we use that information in a whole heap of ways. So we, of course, provide information back to everybody who takes part, but we also do a lot with land managers on the ground, providing really local reporting out. Local councils, for example, know exactly where nest trees are, where their favourite roost sites are for these birds. So when there are vegetation management things that have to happen or prescribed burns that are scheduled, local councils know the areas that they need to put buffers around, or if they need to delay some work because, for example, they may have some fledgling chicks just coming out of hollows. So it enables that really site-specific conservation to happen. And then we do research on the birds as well. We've done a lot of pellet work looking at how the diet of these birds has changed. Sadly, we're collecting a lot more mortality data now, so we're finding out where these birds are dying, particularly in Sydney, and we're just starting to get some reports from southeast Queensland as well. And of course, that's feeding into the work that we're doing on rat poisons. And always.
Yeah. Now, I've brought up the page for the actforbirds.org, which is something that's affiliated with the Birdlife efforts as well. There's a petition there. Please go and sign it. And apart from the petition, there is an awful lot of information about the kind of poisons that are being used out in everyday management in a whole lot of things. Like we talked about once before, we talked about managing graveyards. But of course, there's all sorts of pest control that is happening, and it is very bad for raptors, both daytime raptors and nighttime raptors, and for scavengers. So this site, I wanted to bring people's attention to it. Not only is there some amazing photos of powerful owls, but you can actually take some action. Holly, do you want to talk about the petition anymore, or would you like me to go off on that?
Look, there's a range of fronts that BirdLife we're working on, the issues of these, what we call anticoagulant rodenticides, and our particular concern is the second generation ones. So that's the most common rat poisons that are available on the shelves now. As I said, we're doing this on a number of fronts where we've just put in a submission to the APVMA, who are the Australian Pesticides and Vet Medicine Association. So they're the regulatory body that decides what chemicals can and can't be used in Australia. They've just had opened up public submissions to look at rodenticides, and so we've put in one, of course, calling for second generation rodenticides to be removed from public sale, still available in certain circumstances, but instead removing the most lethal ones from the shelves, and basing that on all the science that is coming out now. There's been a long history internationally showing the impacts of these rat baits, but there's more and more research that's come out in Australia now, both research we have done and also other amazing researchers have uncovered on things like boobook owls, on Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagles, on a whole range of marsupials and reptiles. The impact, or our understanding of the impact, has grown significantly. So, of course, we're working on that front. We also have a campaign that targets Bunnings as the company that has the market share by far and away, the most products, most second generation products on their shelves. And so we're asking people to sign a petition or make a call to their local Bunnings and let them know that they have concerns over the fact that these products are available. There are also action groups that you can set up. So one of the new things we're doing is basically connecting up all these amazing groups around Australia who are really passionate about rat poison and the impact it's having, and getting them all together and exchanging information and talking about what they're doing. We've got some brochures and things that are going to be coming out soon to help people as well. So there's a lot of information on that Act for Birds website that you can do, from petition signing to joining those groups to just getting information on the chemicals to look out for and the chemicals to avoid as well. All that information is on that Act for Birds site.
Now, Holly, I should know this because I've been on this page a million times.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a template for a letter to write to maybe store managers or the board of the company and also your local representatives?
The local representatives, leave it, it's coming. There's some work we're doing right now on some of that work. But in Bunnings, there's some transcripts. So we decided we'd ask people to actually call their local Bunnings very politely to talk to store managers. And so there's some transcripts there for people to use. And otherwise, there's a sort of petition so we can demonstrate numbers of people that are concerned about the issue. Previously, there has been letters that have gone directly to the APVMA as well when they had some different public submissions open.
Yeah.
But for the moment, all the details are on Act for Birds.
Fantastic. I just didn't see them leaping out at me today when I was looking. So I'll link to Act for Birds and to the petition from thebirdemergency.com as well. On the page that will house the recording of our little chat here. Yeah, that is lovely. Okay. And while we're talking powerful hours, I do want to mention that there are a couple of bird emergency conversations that are currently available on the YouTube channel, where we've been talking about powerful hours, urban powerful hours, with Bronwyn Isaac and also Kylie Soanes.
Great.
And they will be out in the podcast feed later. And of course, I also spoke to Richard Sinclair way back in the early days of the podcast, at the very beginning of the pandemic. That's how far back it was. And Richard's got a couple of interesting anecdotes about powerful hours and the effects of poisons and pest control and whatnot. So go back and listen to that one. I think it's about episode 12 or 13. Go way back.
Wonderful.
Yeah, okay, right.
I'll just say that if you're interested in volunteering for Powerful Owl Project in Greater Sydney or Southeast Queensland, again, that Powerful Owl website will have some email addresses, but powerfulowl@birdlife.org.au. If you pop an email through to that email address, we'll get you put on the list. So when we've got our training sessions, which will be coming up, within the next month, you can come on board and hopefully see some really amazing birds. They are a sight to behold, and it was a really great project with some really great on-ground action.
I'm a bit naughty. I hadn't asked you, Holly. I did put your Twitter handle on there as a contact too, so we could go, hey, Holly, I want to go look at owls.
And I will say, good, you should. They are awesome. Yes, they can absolutely tweet at me. That's totally.
Okay, so what are we up to next? I think we're up to, let me just check. I think are we up to Bittens yet? Let me just look. I don't know. Oh, this is the one I had a bit of problems finding where to volunteer, Holly. So you're going to have to, have to tell us about it. Now, let me just do, there's so much to talk about. Maybe we'll do this in Bittens and then we'll leave the rest for next time. The wetlands, the recordings and whatnot in the wetlands.
Shorebirds?
Oh, yes. Here we are. We're on shorebirds first.
So I guess this is just a general call out. Our migratory shorebirds program has been running for over a decade now. And so for those of you who have an interest in all things wading on shorebirds, it's a really good time to be out and watching, because not only is it getting close to time when our migratory shorebirds are going to be heading off to their breeding grounds in the next month or so, April, May, I think is usually time. I'm sure I'll be corrected. Sadly, because there has been so much rain, particularly across the east coast of Australia, there's been so much change to the salinity of our waterways. So if anybody has an interest in monitoring shorebirds, if you look up migratory shorebird program, there'll be some information there, but you can just go to your favourite wet spot and let the migratory shorebirds team know if you've seen any shorebirds by doing a survey in bird data. So you simply, if you don't have a bird data account, you simply register. It's totally free, and there will be a shorebirds survey that you can click through and let the team know what you have seen, because there's likely to be a bit of movement going on. Of course, if some areas have got inundated, shorebirds are going to have to be going to different areas at a really crucial time, because they're fattening up now. They've got to make a big trip, and so this is that final countdown where they're putting on as much weight as they can and feeding a lot before they take that big flight.
And coming up, I can't resist talking about shorebirds again. Curlews, check out the curlews. Pay special attention to them. And it's coming up to Plover Appreciation Day in some parts of the world again, and Migratory Bird Day. That happens twice a year, so that's coming up in May as well. Have a look at all, especially the Twitter feeds of the East Asian Flyway, and you'll learn a lot if you don't already know about how amazing shorebirds are. And I put my hand up when I was a kid. I lived at the beach. I grew up on the beach where there were lots and lots of shorebirds, and I just didn't think they were half as interesting as parrots and honeyeaters and finches and blah, blah, blah. So guilty as charged, Your Honour.
I think they're one of that group of birds. I think that unless you are really a birder, you probably don't know just how extraordinary they are, and they can be really challenging to ID. I admit I'm not great at a lot of my shorebirds. I do know a curlew. They are incredible. Like these journeys that they take every year of thousands of kilometres is amazing, and it makes it a really difficult conservation effort for these guys, because you're dealing internationally with conserving them. It's not only what we do in our own space, but what happens elsewhere that ensures that they hopefully recover, because their populations have undergone serious decline.
That's right. We're only babysitting them, and in that group of birds is the spoon-billed sandpiper, and there's only about 60 of them left. Not as bad as a bird I was talking about yesterday in Brazil, where there is only one left after a fire. There were 6, now there's 1. Yeah, that's not real flash, is it? Now, Holly, we're kicking into overtime. Do you want to do Bittens now to round off our...
Yeah, look, let's talk Bittens, because I think this project's really great because you're not bound by a location. So you don't have to be actually to take part in these couple of projects that the Wetland Birds team have got at Birdlife. You don't have to be physically on site. You don't have to leave your house. If, like me, you're in ISO for a week, you can still do some citizen science by taking part in a couple of projects that the Wetlands team have got. So one is the Glenelg Hopkins Soundscape Project, and the other one is the Wetlands of Australia's Southwest Soundscape Project. And being soundscape, it means that all we require is your ears. So it's listening to some collected audio from a few locations, from Southwest Victoria and then also from going through a platform called Arbamon, which I admit I have not used, but the Wetland Birds team have assured me is very easy to navigate, listening to some audio clips and basically identifying when you hear a bird and IDing that bird. So you get training and you get calls to be able to check your ID, but you're basically sorting through all this audio and detecting which species are present at each of those sites.
Yeah, the Soundscape projects are really good. Earlier in last year? Gee, who knows? No, it must have been last year. Time's flying. I talked to Alini about her soundscapes of the Seabirds project, and they're really good because everybody's generally carrying their phone nowadays, so you can be walking around a wetland and you can hear something, or it doesn't necessarily need to be a wetland. You can be walking around anywhere, hear something you don't know, just record on your phone, and then you can upload that to somewhere, or you can send it to somebody who can tell you what it is. And the Bittens are amazing, aren't they, Holly? Because they have that booming call that travels for a long way, mostly at night, but often during the day. But Bittens will live in all sorts of places that you don't expect them. Now, the Bittens in Rice project has been going for several years now. I hope people are familiar with that. So they're living in rice fields, but they'll live in dense stands of paper barks or all kinds of places anywhere where they can hide because they're a cryptic bird, but sometimes they want to get out and strut around as well. They're huge.
Yeah, they are, but you can walk straight past them in amongst some of that really long, dense vegetation, and you wouldn't know they were there. That really, the call is what is so crucial to seeing these birds, and you wouldn't imagine it because they are quite a large bird. They're, once you know what you're looking for, they're a bit hard to miss if you get a sight of them. They're a bit hard to mistake for anything else as well. But that call is what's crucial. And there's so much great work now being done on acoustic monitoring in general for birds as a great tool for those locations where it might be really difficult to get access to a lot of the time. It could be very remote. It could be challenging environments, or it's much easier to go out once and put a monitoring device out and then just come back and pick it up and sort through the data later than have the investment of going out time and time again to try and visually spot birds or other wildlife. It also, provides a really great way for citizen scientists to get involved, that you don't actually have to leave your house, that you can just, if you've got a spare hour of an evening, you can jump on board to a project like this, or there's a whole range of other projects out there which look at audio calls and contribute to understanding where these birds are.
That's right. So if you're cutting laps of your local lake in the local park, or riding your bike or whatever, once you're attuned to hearing the birds of the marshlands, the wetlands, the swamp at the bottom of the footy ground in your country town, you'll pick up on them everywhere. You'll hear them wherever you go. Yeah. All right, Holly, we got about halfway. Dear listener, or if you're watching, hello, thank you so much. I will, of course, be putting this out sometime shortly as a podcast, but it will always be available on thebirdemergency.com and on the YouTube channel. Let me plug, if you're watching this now, you are somehow on the YouTube channel, either via the Bird Emergency website or YouTube itself. Please subscribe. I need to get to 500 before I can use things like the community tab and share a lot more stuff. So while you're a minnow, you can't do a lot of things. So even if you're only an occasional user of YouTube, hit me up, subscribe and get the notifications for when all of the live streams are happening. All of the past live streams are up there, and I'm in the process of chunking them up so that you don't need to listen to me being grumpy for an hour at a time. So there we are. Holly, anything else you want to let everyone know before we...
Oh, no, look, just go to birdlife.org.au or birdsinbackyards.net for all the information about all the various projects that are going on around Australia that you can get involved in. We'll come back and talk about the other half of the long list that I have, and maybe there'll be a few more added by the time that we do our chat next. But there's lots of great ways to see and hear birds around Australia, and you don't need to take part in any of these activities by any stretch. Birds are easily accessible for the vast majority of us, but it's a really great way to contribute to science and our understanding of the birds that are around us, and help us use that data to better protect our birds. But I think the citizen science activities also benefit the people who take part as well. I see citizen science as very much a two-way conversation. This isn't about me just sucking data from you and using your knowledge. I want you guys to learn as well, and often find something like Birds in Backyards or the Aussie Backyard Bird Count can be a bit of that little light bulb moment, that little introduction into birds. And I think once you start watching and listening, you notice much more around you, and maybe you start to notice your wetland birds that are around. And I think you get benefits yourself. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel calm. It's an enjoyable activity that you can do easily. And the added bonus is, of course, we learn more too, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. Now, there's a couple more plugs before we go. Mm-hmm. You need to look quite carefully at the BirdLife website to find the wetlands team. So if you can't find out, you can send to info or something like that, or reach out to Holly at Birds
Absolutely.
in Backyards on Twitter, and Holly will point you in the direction of the right person. Now, I'm just putting that off. one of the next projects that we were going to talk about is coming up very quickly, so we might not get to that before our next time. Wings on Kings. Now, not the last episode in my podcast feed, but the one before was speaking to Kate about Wings on Kings. So if you are interested in the King Island bird surveys, it's there. It's on thebirdemergency.com, and the whole conversation is also on the YouTube channel. And your friend and mine, Holly, Millie, Wing Threads. Now, that conversation is out. It's on the YouTube channel. It will go up on Bird Emergency within the next week. And it's the next one coming after this live stream goes in the feed, on the podcast feed. But Millie is still fundraising.
She is still. I think this is last week or two, I think, for her crowdfunding campaign.
Yep, she's getting close. For those that don't know, Millie's part of the Birdlife team with Holly, but she's flying her microlight around Australia to show us how amazing the flight that the shorebirds make in their migration, because it's approximately the same distance as heading from Broome up to maybe Russia, Siberia, Japan, Korea and whatnot. And Millie's going to schools as well. So get on board. Wingthreads.com, and it's Wingthreads without a dash, I think. Is that right?
That's right.
That's right. Wingthreads.com. But do go and listen to the conversation I had with Millie. She's a lot of fun. And she's got a lot to say, and she put me in my place, I might just say. So it was good. She learned me a few things. So,
Wonderful.
So that's what's coming up. Holly, thanks. What do we got maybe next week? Oh, there we go. Holly's just given me, yes, it is wingthreads.com. Thank you, Holly. Birds in Backyards, at Birds in Backyards on Twitter. This has been Monday Megaphone. I'm Grant Williams, at Bird Emergency on Twitter. Don't forget to check out thebirdemergency.com. Thanks, Holly. Bye, everyone.